And welcome back to another episode of our podcast. My name is David Levine, founder and CEO of HealthTech Solutions. Today we are talking about rethinking healthcare going into 2026, taking a look at a fresh approach to the challenges with patient care. And I'd like to welcome today's guest, Wendi. So Wendi, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Wendi Carroll. I'm the founder and president CEO of Carroll and Morrisette Consulting, LLC, and we consult in the biopharma biotech space with small and startup companies to help them get over the finish line with their product.
So from your perspective, working in biotech and clinical operations, what do you think healthcare organizations need to rethink going into 2026 to truly improve their patient experience and patient outcomes?
There's a lot of things we can do with that. A few that come to the top of my head is just making the patient care experience a little more interactive. And also, I think healthcare institutions need to be able to give their physicians a little more time with the patients. Right now, a lot of physicians, if you speak to them, not only are they burning out, but they and their staff, they get 10 to 15 minutes to see a patient. And that's not enough. Sometimes patients with complex histories or complex issues, they need a lot more time with the care team. So you may need 45 minutes to an hour for one patient. You may only need 15 minutes for a patient who's in fairly good health. But especially as we age, you need more time, and the physicians and their nursing staff or healthcare providers need to have time to really dig into what's going on with the patient and be able to listen not just with their ears, but try to listen to the undercurrent and see, where do they need to ask the more probing questions to get to the bottom of what's going on with that individual. The other is I think our patient population is becoming more and more savvy about healthcare. Unfortunately, a lot of the things they go to Dr. Google, used to be where they went. Now they're going to Dr. AI to try and get answers to their healthcare questions before even contacting a provider. And that leads to misinformation, misdiagnoses, and patients treating themselves with things that they probably shouldn't be, and not understanding that they may be doing more harm than good. And the other challenge, I think, is just the lack of providers in some areas. I know we've just recently moved up to Portland in the Pacific Northwest, and my parents just trying to find a primary care provider has been almost impossible. There are not many that are taking new patients in our area. So they urge you to go to urgent care or an immediate care clinic, which isn't the right thing either for patients who need continuing care.
All right. No, I appreciate the insight. Yeah, that definitely is an issue. I mean, I can vouch from the patient side, in the past, being with a primary care provider where literally they come in and within 10, 15 minutes, they're kind of pushing you out the door because they're trying to get as many patients in as they can. Versus, when you switch to something, again, in my experience, like going to a direct primary care where I've now had the experience where I'll go and they'll sit with you for an hour and just, have a conversation. They'll ask you just about stuff even outside, just general health because they want to truly understand you and what you're doing.
And we've had that experience as well with our primary care provider. She happens to be more of a concierge type physician, but she ended up going out on her own and starting her own practice because she wanted to have the time to spend with patients. And one of the things we love about working with her is the fact that when we see her for an annual physical can be an hour and a half to 2 hours, because as you mentioned, they get to more than just your physical health. They're looking at your mental health. What are you doing? How active are you? What's your social construction around you as well? Really looking at the whole patient. And she has the time to do that. The other is anything, you have any question at any time, or even starting to get a cold or something happens, it's easy to jump on a telehealth visit with her and to reach out to her at any time of day or night, and she or her staff will get back to us right away. So it's nice having that personal touch and really being able to get to know each other and trust in what we're being told. I think that's another big thing when people are going through the 10 to 15 minute and pushing you out the door. There's no way to build that level of trust in the provider, or for the provider to build the level of trust in you that if they give you instructions to do, or something, for follow-up, that you actually will follow through with it, and that they can follow up with you and check on you. And if it was an exercise program, you can go and say, yes, I've started this and I'm doing this, and this is how I feel.
Well, perfect. So kind of getting more into your business, so what led you to start Carroll Morrisette Consulting, and what type of challenges are biotech and healthcare organizations coming to you for most often today?
I have been in the corporate world for over 25 years. With my last corporate role, again, it was a restructure and my position was eliminated, which was fine. It made business sense. However, at that point, I decided I didn't want to go and try and build an organization, only from a business perspective to have things changed around or some of what we built actually dismantled because people didn't appreciate the vision that I had. It didn't fit with the business vision. And so I decided to go out and consult and use that time. And also I needed a lot more flexibility with my family. My husband has a chronic illness, so having time to spend with him and take care of him when needed, or having time to visit with our kids who are older and be able to come up, which is one of the reasons we moved, and then also with aging parents, being able to be a caretaker when needed, as well as being able to build a business. And also I wanted to go back to working with startup and small companies who maybe needed a little more support and assistance rather than companies that were a little bit bigger. And I'm drawn to smaller companies, especially in the rare disease space, because so much is needed in that space. There's so many different genetic diseases. There's over 7,000 of them that we actually know of, and over, I want to say, 300,000. It's either 30 or 300,000 patients, in the U.S. alone that have these diseases that have no treatment. Sometimes it's just one patient, and it turns out their parents end up building their own companies and starting things to be able to treat their child. And that should never happen. We should have industry that is supporting those parents and working closely with those parents to determine what needs to be done and help them develop a medication for that. I think as we move more towards personalized medicine in the US and across the globe, we will see more of these, what they call N of one treatments. And those treatments will help countless children and countless parents across the world be able to maybe determine what their child has with a rare disease and find something to treat those children so that they can have not only a long life, but a good quality of life along the way. So I do work with those smaller companies to get their products across the finish line and share my expertise that I have, but also bring others in where needed, and working as well with expanded access programs. A lot of times as companies get towards filing for approval with the regulatory agencies, they've only treated in a rare population maybe 20 patients or 30 patients as they're going, but there may be another 50, 75, 100 who are waiting for this medication because they can't wait. Every day means a increase in mortality or a decrease in the patient's ability to actually have any type of recovery or any type of response to the medication. So they can apply through their physician, they can apply to the company to have compassionate use, the medication on a compassionate use basis, or we can expand access to the product until it becomes commercially available, at which time those patients switch over to the commercial therapy. So helping companies actually plan those programs, collect the real world data, which is very important to see how the products work in real life, collecting that data in an organized fashion so that it helps inform the safety and effectiveness of the product on a longer term basis, and also so that we can help those patients as much as possible.
No, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're working with your clients on operational or compliance improvements, what areas do you typically see needing the most attention or restructuring as you're helping these companies continue their development process?
Yeah, some of it is when we think about compliance, a lot of times it's the last thing companies think about because they're so focused on getting the drug into clinic, understanding what the medication is, and getting to approval. That is the ultimate goal of most companies, which is a great goal. Let's get the product approved. But they don't always think about the compliance and building that story along the way and making sure they have some sort of storyboard of how did they come to find this medication? What are the questions they asked? If they had some sort of failure somewhere along the line, why did that happen and what did they do to rectify it? And being able to tell that all the way along, because staff come and go, and when they leave, that knowledge base goes with them. So you want to make sure that somewhere there's that knowledge base within the company that can be used to support any questions a regulatory agency may have, whether it's the US FDA in Europe, the EMA in Japan, the PMDA, all the different regulatory agencies as you go to file, that you're able to answer the different questions that they come up with, either on the scientific basis of the program the operational basis and how you operationalized it and overcame challenges, as well as the access portion. Where did we get the evidence to be able to provide access to these patients? That is a key thing. A lot of times, from an operational perspective, we think about getting to approval, but we don't always think about what happens after that. So having the right experts there, not even full-time in a small company, I know you're trying to save revenue or save money until you have revenue coming in. So being able to support a small company with a fractional executive or somebody, a consultant or a contractor is more efficient at times. Bringing somebody in with that knowledge that can help you build, help you oversee challenges where maybe your protocol is too complex and it makes it operationally difficult for a clinic to actually run that program. So thinking through how the study is going to happen makes a huge difference. Making sure that you have patients and family caregivers or family members involved, as well as the physicians and nurses who are going to have to run your study involved as you build it, so that you can get that practical knowledge in, and making sure that you're really only collecting the data that you need and not collecting everything but the kitchen sink. That happens a lot where we collect all this data and then ultimately it never gets used for the program or it never gets interrogated to help with access. And maybe we don't have the right information that the payers are going to want and your insurance companies to be able to pay for that product once it gets approved. So making sure we have all of that early and have actually thought through what that looks like so that the patients who need the product most actually can get it and have their insurance company help support the cost of it, or in some countries, their medication organization, the payers who pay for the product, that they can help support that so patients don't have to pay so much out of pocket and they can actually access the product that they need to help treat their condition and help them live a long and quality life. A lot of it is getting them to think outside the box and also think longer term. Sometimes speed to market is, I know, one of the things everybody wants. From a business perspective, you want to get out there so that you can make the revenue back. And from a patient perspective, you want the product. And from the study team perspective or operational perspective, you want to do the best science and best study out there to help support these patients. A lot of times, sometimes speed can take away from your operational efficiency. When you have a study protocol that has 10 amendments, are you still doing the same study at the end of the day? And how onerous is this on your patients? Yes, you may have speed to collect data and speed to getting your study started and out there, but you've sacrificed the continuity of the study. You've sacrificed potentially your patients because every time you have an amendment, they have to reconsent for the study. And it gives them an opportunity to really think about what they're doing and do they want to be part of this anymore. So you can have a large drop off in your patient population. And as I said, and it's also expensive because you have to pay IRB fees and you have to look at what tests are you adding and how much are you changing. Vendor costs increase because you're changing the scope with your vendors. What your commercial team may be planning for now has to change because of what you've changed in the protocol. We're spending an additional 2 weeks, 3 weeks to actually sit and think through the whole thing and really get the best study out there that you can, and minimizing the number of amendments will ultimately get you to the end faster with a better quality product at the end of the day.
All right. Well, perfect. Appreciate those insights.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of shifting more on to you a bit, what part of the work that you do energizes you the most, whether it's the strategic leadership, mentoring teams, improving compliance, or something else?
Strategic leadership, I think, gets me excited, and also the ability to work with different organizations. Actually, I enjoy learning as I go. I enjoy being able to help not only these organizations, but help them help patients at the end of the day. And seeing a novel therapy or innovative therapy, when you think of gene therapies and some of the things that we're looking at using AI and other different types of technology nowadays, what we can bring to a patient to actually help them at the end of the day is what gets me out of bed, and being able to have that impact on their lives and know that what we did the best job we could to get the product, as safe and effective as we can, and that somebody is benefiting out there and able to live their life in a different way, in a more meaningful way, that it really was to support them at the end of the day. I've been lucky enough in my career, especially in the rare disease space, to actually get to talk to some of the patients that we had treated, and hearing from them makes it all worthwhile. It really is why we do what we do.
So currently, do you have any major initiatives that you're focused on, whether that's within your consulting work or through leadership roles that aim to strengthen operations, compliance, or patient outcomes?
I can mention I am working with a group of individuals on a pediatric alliance as part of that organization or group. And we're looking at getting pediatric patients included in trials earlier and getting their data. The way things work now, you do all the studies in adults first, and then you start doing studies in pediatric patients. And especially in a rare disease space, these patients don't have that long. They can't wait for that. We need to start thinking about how do we include them earlier in the process. And also pediatric patients, they're not little adults. They have their own way of metabolizing medications, their own way, as they grow, of how the medications may impact them, where in an adult it may make you sleepy. In a pediatric patient, the medication may actually make them bounce off the walls. And also pediatrics comes with their own set of challenges, especially as patients get older and the compliance. If you think of yourself or if people have kids, you think about when they're little, and say maybe up until they're about 8 years old or so, you manage all their medications. You make sure they take it on time, that they actually take the medication like they're supposed to. If anything happens, you're the one that talks to the doctor to let them know if there's a safety event. As children start getting into their teen years, they want to be more like their peers. They start taking on, as a parent, you give them more autonomy over taking their medications and assume they're taking them the way they're supposed to. But a lot of times, especially children, back in my early days when I was doing my residency, we would see children with diabetes who actually came in with diabetic ketoacidosis or too low of a sugar level or too high because they played around with their insulin because they wanted to go to that sleepover and be just like everybody else. So they either wouldn't take their insulin, so their sugars would get extremely high and put them in a crisis, or they would take too much to try and get through that. And again, their sugars would get too low and put them in a different crisis. So it's trying to look at the psychology of the patients as well and meeting them where they're at. So some of those things are things to consider when we try to include pediatric patients in a clinical study. Other things, looking at the state of Oregon, which has a huge amount of research going on at multiple institutions, not just at Oregon Health and Sciences University, but at Oregon State, at University of Oregon, at Portland State. They have some amazing technology for devices, as well as other research into potential medications. Or I saw one pitch recently where a company, they were building like a skin on a matrix that you could use in surgeries. It started with pediatric surgeries where, with congenital heart issues for infants, where they could go in and actually the tissue would then regenerate and incorporate in the child's heart. So they wouldn't need multiple surgeries over their lifetime as they grew to revise the original surgery. And trying to get more industry involved here in the state of Oregon and supporting these organizations, especially as federal funding is sort of hit or miss at the moment. How do we fund and continue this research and continue making these important medications and support these institutions that are doing this work on an ongoing basis? So really starting to look into that and how we can bring industry, university practices, and the state legislature together to build more of an ecosystem here in the state of Oregon.
No, that sounds great. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot happening, a lot going on, a lot to manage. But
A lot in my head.
yeah. But so kind of as a follow-up, so when you're helping these organizations kind of improve their compliance or operational workflows, how often is the data protection or cybersecurity considerations coming into the conversation?
It comes in quite a bit nowadays. Data protection is very high on everybody's radar because the data we collect, it is personal health information, even though most of the personal health information is redacted. We see patients as a patient number or an ID. Sometimes we collect initials. In some countries we can't, and they make up initials for the patient. Sometimes we can collect date of birth, especially in a pediatric population, we're allowed to do that. However, as pediatrics cross into adults, we don't collect the date of birth. We collect the year and maybe a month, but we collect the year so we know approximately what age patients are. And that's part of the data protection in some countries outside of the US, and it's becoming stronger in the US as well. And I think cybersecurity, with some of the hacking that's gone on and some issues that people have had with viruses and phishing scams, there is a lot of training that goes on. And a lot of the bigger organizations definitely look at cybersecurity as a key thing that they need to think about. And I know there's new legislation coming out, I believe, around cybersecurity, or there's new policies, I believe, coming out just from some of the people I know in that area who are CISOs, which is becoming more prominent in some of these companies. And I believe companies like yours look at that as well and help organizations move forward. But I think with smaller companies, sometimes it's probably the last thing on their mind. And I find even with some consultants, some people using publicly available emails. Using AI is a big thing that people need to look at for cybersecurity and protection of your information. Because with AI, I don't think people always realize that we are teaching the models. The data we put in there in some of these, in Chat GPT and Perplexity, in Claude, whatever one that you use, the data you put in there is actually going into a large data pool where anybody can have access to it unless you've built a framework around it and you're doing something that does not teach those models. And if you want to use your own data, it's confidential information, it's proprietary information. You really have to think about what you're putting in and who's going to have access to it. Even as a consultant with an N of one, it's just myself and the company, I think about those type of things all the time. It took me a while to even adopt any AI to use for some of the main, other things in my business more administratively. But even then I'm looking at, okay, what can I use that will protect me as an entrepreneur, but also protect any information I get from any company that comes along? And how do I firewall companies one from the other and make sure that passwords are unique and long and changed every 3 to 6 months? And what other things can I do to protect the clients that I work with from any intrusions, but also how do they protect me from potential intrusions from their company?
Yes, you can use AI if you have, proprietary sensitive data, but you need to go get yourself a privatized instance of an AI tool or platform. And that's actually a project that I'm taking on, to be able to have options for even my clients or others who are looking for a solution that has that plus automation as part of that same platform. So that's a project I'm getting ready to kick off here in probably the next week or two to start getting something developed. So we do have a solution for, especially for smaller businesses who are looking for something around AI that they can use in their own business.
Yeah, and I found a lot of smaller businesses or first-time entrepreneurs, they don't think about that. It's like, oh, I'm just going to go and use, my Chat GPT to do all these things. And they don't realize that the data they're putting in is going out there into the ether for anybody to use. So, and they don't think to look even, if you look at Chat and some of these others, they do have tiers where you don't feed the AI model, where you can have separate sections that are just for you to play around with a project and work without feeding the model and without them saving your data. They're not too much more to get a Teams type version that can do that. It's not too much more a month. Yes, if they only have an enterprise version, that is really expensive and is cost prohibitive to a small business. So I think what you're working on is going to be significantly help some of these small companies.
Yeah, and I know just from even looking, for example, on the ChatGPT side, if you're having a Plus account, you're probably paying what, $20 a month. Then you'd want to upgrade to their business
Yeah.
model or plan, then you have to get a minimum of 2 seats because it's a team plan, and then I think you're paying about $30. So
Yeah.
it's especially when you balance that against the data privacy, it's not a significant jump in cost when
Yeah.
you consider that piece of it.
Yeah. And I'm glad they actually have something that is achievable for a lot of people. It's like, it's only $10 more a month to have a space that doesn't feed anything. And I know I've upgraded to that. And when I use it for different questions, it actually says on the bottom, this is a private space. We do not use any of this data to feed our model.
Yep, so that's
They
good.
do reiterate that, which is nice to see. But I think the potential for cyber intrusion even into those things is something we need to look at as well.
I mean, there's always going to be risk, no matter how much you're in your own organization able to put in, or regardless of what your vendor does. Nothing is 100% foolproof. And that's the one
Mhm.
thing that I think people still need to keep in mind and understand. I mean, you can have the most expensive security system in the world. Someone can
Mhm.
still find a way to bypass it.
Oh, yeah. Whether it's physical security around your house or someplace else, cybersecurity around what you're doing online. There's always somebody smart enough to figure out a way. And that's what somebody enjoys. Some people enjoy looking for holes.
All right. Well, I know we're about at our time today. So
Mhm.
is there any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I'd say the main thing, especially in healthcare, if we go back to that, is be curious. Yes, do your research, but make sure you're having those conversations and developing the relationship, whether it's caregiver or patient to healthcare worker, or a healthcare worker to other healthcare worker, or even in a clinical trial setting and with somebody in industry. Make sure you're having those conversations and building those networks. If you have a disease, look and see a lot. There are a lot of patient advocacy groups out there that have wonderful information and can really help you manage a process, especially if when you're told you have some sort of chronic disease, or if you're told you have, a heart issue, or, even a rare disease. Look at some of the rare disease organizations. They have great patient advocacy groups that can help you along the way and help you bear the burden. You don't have to do it all alone.
Well, Wendy, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been
Mhm.
a great conversation and lots of great information. And for anyone who'd like to know more or would like to reach out to Wendy, all the information will be in the description below the video.
Okay, and thank you, David. I've enjoyed having this conversation with you as well.
All
And
right.
good luck with launching your project.
Appreciate it.